What's up? This is Ross with Tactics Boardshop, here to help give you a guide on how to choose longboard trucks. Now, there's a lot going on here and it can be confusing at times, so I'm going to run through the basic features on what makes different trucks better for different types of riding. The first thing we're going to want to figure out is what width of truck you're going to want to have. Now, generally you want your width of your truck being the width of the full axle to be about the same width of your board. So most longboards are going to be about 9 to 10 inches wide, so generally you're going to want a 9 to 10 inch axle. Now, choosing truck width can be kind of confusing because some companies will measure it in inches and some will measure in millimeters. Now, generally when a company measures in inches, they're talking about the full width of the axle here, where if they're measuring in millimeters, they're generally talking about the width of the hanger alone. Generally, you're going to want to get that full width of the axle about as close to the width of your board as possible, but if it's a little off, it's not a huge deal. Now, the next major decision you're going to want to make is reverse Kingpin or standard Kingpin. Now, a standard Kingpin is your standard skateboard truck that you'll see on most park or street skateboards, and that's going to have the Kingpin on the inside tucked away from the surface of the hanger, and that's done so that it's not in the way when you're doing coping tricks and ledge tricks and that sort of thing. So generally the standard Kingpin trucks are going to sit a little bit lower as well, so you're going to get a lower ride height out of them. Great for a cruiser deck if you're riding something like this, like a 9-inch about cruiser. It's great to have those standard Kingpin trucks on there because they're going to have that lower ride height, and if you want to take it in the park, it's not going to hold you back. But generally most longboarding is done on reverse Kingpin trucks, and reverse Kingpin trucks are going to ride a little bit taller, and they're going to have the Kingpin facing outwards towards the tip and the tail, where the standard Kingpin trucks, Kingpins face inwards towards the center of the board. So with these reverse Kingpin trucks, they're going to be taller, like I said, and that's going to make them a little more divey and responsive, generally at slow speeds. And you're also going to get more customization with the bushing seat and changing your bushings to make them more stable for higher speed riding. So generally, if you want to do more transportation, just cruising, free ride, downhill, on your longboard, you're going to generally want a reverse Kingpin truck. They also come in larger sizes more typically, where it's harder to find a large standard Kingpin truck. A weird little exception to all of this are the going sidewinders. Now, these are a standard Kingpin truck, but as you can see, there are 2 of them. So it's going to give it 2 axes of turn, which is going to give it a really, really tight turning radius, very carvy, great for low speed riding, transportation, cruising around. But as you get going a little faster, they're going to be very unstable because they do have those 2 axes of turns. Cool thing about this, if you want a really wide standard Kingpin truck, you can pull this little middle joint out of here, and then you're just going to have a 10-inch standard Kingpin truck. So once you've made your decision between reverse Kingpin and standard Kingpin, you're going to want to take a look at the bushing seats. Now, like I said, with reverse Kingpin trucks, you've got a lot more variety of bushing seats to dial in your setup. So now, in general, a wide open, less restrictive bushing seat like you'll see on these Chargers right here is going to give your hanger more room to move around and give you a more lively, free, open carving turn. So an open, unrestricted bushing seat, great for carving, slow speed riding like freestyle, mellow free ride, transportation, good option there. Whereas a more restrictive bushing seat, more similar to the Charger 2s or the Caliber 2s, is going to give you, it's going to not let your hanger move as freely. It's going to cup that bushing a little tighter. So it's going to be a little more restrictive, not quite as lively for that lower speed riding, but it's going to make you more stable for the higher speed riding. But with a more restrictive bushing seat, you can always put in a less restrictive bushing that will give you a little more lively turn as well. So the final and often most confusing part to talk about is your base plate angle. Now, the base plate angle is this angle right here of your base plate, which dictates the angle that your hanger will sit at. Now this tells you a lot about the way the truck will turn. So 50-degree base plate is your most common base plate. Most stock trucks come with a 50-degree base plate, and that is going to give you a tall ride height with a lot of turn. So if you lean into your trucks just a little bit, it's going to make them turn a lot. Very lively and responsive, great for carving, cruising, transportation, and mellow free ride and downhill. Whereas a lower degree base plate is going to make your hanger sit generally a little bit lower, and that same amount of pressure that you put into a 50-degree base plate is going to make you turn less on a lower degree base plate like this 42. So it's going to be less responsive at slower speeds, but once you start going a little bit faster, it's going to be more stable because it's going to be less twitchy, and it's going to react less to the little bumps and imperfections in the road. Also, when you're in a hard corner, you can really lean hard into your truck without oversteering and twitching or sliding out. So lower degree base plates, great for faster riding. But if you're going anything under 30, honestly, you're going to want to be on a 50-degree base plate because it's going to be more lively, responsive, and it's just going to be more fun and more enjoyable to ride. Now, a funky thing that a lot of downhill riders will do is they will ride a taller base plate in the front and a lower angle base plate in the back. And what that's going to do is it's going to make you turn from your front and give you a very stable back truck. And where speed wobbles will come from is when you get steering out of the back, and it's going to steer from the back and it's going to push that front truck around, and that's going to wiggle and wobble and be really difficult to control. So what these guys will do again is they'll put that higher angle base plate in the front, so you're going to steer from the front and get a nice lively divey carvy feel. And then in that back truck, it's going to keep it, a little less responsive, and it's going to track that front truck better, and you're less likely to get that back truck steer that's going to give you those speed wobbles. So a good thing to play around with if you're trying to get into downhill and you want to stay more stable. You can always do that by, if you have the same degree truck, you can just wedge your front a little bit or de-wedge your back truck a little bit to make it a little more stable. Now, no matter what kind of trucks you have, you can always customize the way it rides by swapping around the bushings. Now, there's several different shapes of bushings. We've got your cones, you've got stepped cones, you got barrels, and you got eliminator or stepped barrels. Cones are going to be your least restrictive. Your stepped barrel eliminators are going to be your most restrictive. So if you want a nice lively feel, go with something less restrictive. You want something for faster riding, go with something more restrictive. Softer bushings, again, more lively and playful. Harder bushings, more restrictive. Now, there's some guidelines here, but it's all based on personal preference. So if you're lighter, go with something softer, less restrictive. Heavier, go with something harder, more restrictive. But you really just got to play around with it based on what type of riding style you do and what kind of feel you want your trucks to have. So luckily bushings are cheap, so pick up a couple sets and get used to customizing your setup so you can dial it in and make it feel as good as possible. That's just about everything you need to know about choosing your longboard trucks. If you have any more questions, head over to tactics.com or drop a message in the box below, and I will do my best to personally answer all of your questions.